this episode, guys, I'm going to talk to you about the stupidest things that I've done as a real estate investor. Really, the dumbest things I did, not only in my first year, but things that kept coming up that held me back and kept me from achieving the freedom I want. I'm sitting here and I'm writing out notes of all of the mistakes that I've done, and I'm just laughing. And I was talking to another guy just about all the mistakes that happen. And guys, as you guys jump in, you're going to make some mistakes. And I hope that this episode, it will allow you to skip the mistakes that I made. But we all make mistakes, right? And it's not so much about avoiding mistakes, but it's about learning from those mistakes and picking up and using each one as a learning experience to get to the next level and going from there. So without further ado, jumping in here, I want to talk about the top mistakes that I have made as a real estate investor. Now, guys, my name is Ronald Walker. I'm your host here at the Forge to Win. If you find this video is valuable for you, please like it. Hit the subscribe button down below. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified of future videos that come along. So without further ado, let's jump right in. All right, guys. So the very first mistake that I made as a beginning real estate investor, right, specifically jumping into wholesaling, is pretending I was the man from the very beginning, pretending I knew it all, right? Going in, trying to act big, act tough. Hey, I'm my own business owner, and not asking for help. And what this did is it made everyone feel, one, I wasn't adding value. It kind of made people, stand off like, oh, he's got his thing going on. He's cool. He's good. And it never gave me the opportunity to, one, ask for help, and two, for people to really connect with me, right? It was kind of this, when you fake it till you make it, what you sacrifice is connection with other people. You sacrifice authenticity with other people, where if you come across and you're very honest, you're like, hey, I'm brand new, I'm hungry, this is what I'm looking for, how can we work together? People can work with that. People want to work with people who are hungry. But if you do what I did and you kind of pretend, right, you're like, all right, I've read all this stuff, I've watched YouTube, I've done this stuff, all right, this is what to do. There's not much wiggle room for authentic connection. And guys, one of the things I've learned over the last 9 years of doing this business is being authentic, being sincere, and sincerely listening, caring, and adding value to people comes from a place of authenticity. If you're pretending, you're going to push people away, and people are going to feel it, and they might not know why, but they are, and that's going to limit the amount of opportunities that you get. Because as a real estate investor, one of the things that we're focused on is finding good deals, and one of the key ways to eliminate competition is to be sincerely authentic, to care, and to really give value to the people we're talking to. And the more value that we can give, the more human connection that we're able to establish, the better deals that we get. So number two is I had too many strategies going on at once. Specifically for me, is I had too many marketing channels happening at once. I was doing cold calling, I was doing driving for dollars, I was sending out direct mail, I was trying to figure out PPC. I had all these going at once. I had relationships that I was connecting with. Send me deals. And so I had multiple channels that deals could come my way through. Now, I did some deals, but I was literally doing way too few of too many things. So I was constantly busy, but I was never focused. There's a guy right now, another guy that talks about, he says, in order to make, to really make inroads when you get into not just real estate investing, but business in general, is find out who you serve, find out who your customer is. In our case, is motivated sellers. Then pick one way of connecting with them, right? Pick one channel, right? Is that offline outbound? Okay, cool. Is it cold calling? Okay, cool. And focus your time there until you get traction. And then pick one strategy, right? There's so many strategies in real estate. There's subject to, there's cash, there's wholesaling, there's rentals, there's apartments, there's commercial. Guys, you got to narrow it down to one. So what you do is you find out, okay, I'm helping motivated sellers. I'm going to choose cold calling as an example, or direct mail, or, you could do pay per click, whatever that is. Choose one, and then one strategy. Hey, I'm going to wholesale properties. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to focus. Someone once said, if you have one thing that you're focusing on, it takes a threshold of about 90% of your attention to be able to successfully deploy the strategy that you're thinking about with 90% of your effort. So like the book, The One Thing, literally carve out hours to focus on that thing until you get results. But for me, man, I was all over the place. I literally had direct mail happening. I was supposed to cold call. I was writing out letters myself. I was ordering letters. I didn't know where things were coming from. I didn't know where things were going. I was talking to people, and all of that is good when you're taking action. But what's better is pick one strategy, pick one marketing channel, and stick to that one thing and go deep, because then you'll have a constant flood or constant river, a stream, and it's almost like a stream of life coming towards you that you can start working. That keeps you mentally sharp, keeps you clear, and it allows you to win. So my mistake number 2 is I was just doing too many strategies, too many things at one time. Mistake number 3, guys. This is hard. I still struggle with this one from time to time, but it's one thing is I hired people too early. I wanted to scale too fast, and I wanted to scale before I knew what I was doing. And guys, you want to make money first. Like what I did is, man, I immediately went out. I did a whole bunch of deals, and I went out and hired an assistant. And I didn't know how to train that assistant. I just hired them, and I had them taking calls. Well, now from my end, I wasn't the one talking to them, and my employee was talking to them, and they didn't care as much as I did. And I didn't know how to teach them how to talk to people. So I had overhead because I was paying them a salary. They were not talking to people as good or as authentically as me, and they knew less than I did. And I was relying on them to pass me deals from me talking to other people so I could close them. Well, what happened for me, literally way back when, guys, is all of a sudden I went from being super busy to crickets because I expected them to be the engine for my business, right? Because everything was funneled through them. They weren't an admin. They were literally supposed to filter calls. Well, they didn't filter calls for me. They literally blocked everything because they weren't doing a good job, and people weren't connecting with me, and they didn't feel taken care of because I hadn't trained her appropriately. And so, guys, before you hire, I totally recommend this. Before you hire and you take on the expenses, you take on having to be a leader, you take on having to be a trainer, don't do that first. Don't hire first. Don't do what I did. Get out in the world, take massive action, get some deals, get some money under your belt, and win. It wasn't fair for her, and it wasn't fair for me to take it on. And I got myself in too deep of waters that I could have completely avoided. So guys, don't hire too early. Number 4. This is very similar to one before. Number 4 was I wasn't consistent in my lead flow. So I talked about I was doing everything. Well, what happened was I wasn't consistent in doing everything. I'd do a whole bunch of work the first week, then I wouldn't do it for 2 weeks. And then I'd do a whole bunch of work the next week, and I wouldn't do it. And what happened was I'd get a deal, and I'd stop. I'd be like, I'd be writing on that deal, writing on that deal, writing on that deal. I'm going to make money. And then it would fall through, and I'd have to pick everything back up. And it caused this massive inconsistency. So I was literally in my mind, I was spending money before I made it, right? I was counting on those deals before I'd made it. There was this big CEO, I was listening to him speak, and he said, I've got like 24 deals in the pipeline right now. This is not real estate. This is another industry. He's like, I got 24 deals in the pipeline right now. I've been doing this long enough that I know that probably more than 15 of them are going to fall through. And I'm only going to be able to capitalize on like 6 or 7 of them, maybe even 3 or 4. So I have 24, and all of them I'm super invested in, but I know only a small amount's going to pan out. In the real estate industry, if there's one thing I've learned is if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. And our hopes and dreams, our need for something to happen does not matter. It doesn't matter if you need the money today or not. That will not get you the deals you need. It will not make you the money that you need. What will make you the money is consistent action, constantly adding value, and winning. And when things fall through, you have another deal taking its place. So guys, I wasn't consistent in my lead flow. I want you guys to go out there and I want you to be consistent in your lead flow. So the next thing I did was I did too much admin. So I hired people initially, but then, which we talked about earlier, I hired people too quickly. But when I hired people, I didn't hire them for the right things. And what I did is I spent all my time on admin work rather than finding sellers. Now I spent a whole bunch of time finding sellers initially, but at some point you get in this spot where you're setting up your CRM, you're setting up your website, you're setting up this, you're setting up your bid cards, you're writing these documents, you're spending a lot of time on admin work. And what that's not is it's not revenue generating. It doesn't make you money, right? As a beginning real estate investor, the one thing that makes us money, that made me money, was talking to sellers, was finding deals, was talking to other wholesalers, was finding those deals. That's the one thing that made me money. And what I did was there was a lot of fear in me. If someone said yes, that means there was more work. And so what happened was I pulled back and I only did a little bit. I didn't do as much as I needed. And so I focused too much on admin work rather than on sales, rather than on talking to people, rather than on negotiating deals, rather than finding them. And that caused me to really slow down in that deal flow. And with expenses and hiring people, it put a squeeze. So I made a lot of money, but then all of a sudden, I'm out there and I'm like, oh, I gotta look the part. And this kind of goes back to the pretending. I gotta look the part instead of be the part. And once I transitioned out of, I got to look like a big company and I've got to actually have consistent deal flow. Guys, when I transitioned, literally 2 months later in my business, I skyrocketed, right? All of a sudden, I went from one deal a month to like 4 deals a month. And I remember one time, I think this was in 2015. Actually, it was in June 2015. I went to the hospital and I met with a seller at a hospital. He had gone in there and we were talking. And it was him. It was his daughter, and he had 2 sons, and we're in the hospital, and we're talking through the properties, right? And I think I was in the hospital for like 2.5 hours, walking them through, got the entire family to sell off on the property, left there, and I got back, and at that point, I did have an assistant. At that point, I called my assistant. I said, hey, I got the paperwork. I'm going to come home and scan it. And he says over the phone, he's like, we have 15 under contract right now. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, we got between you and I had 2 other acquisition guys at that time. Between you and the other, we have 15. Well, the focus there, spending time on revenue generating activities. At that point, I actually hired a dispo guy and he had 2 months of work of just getting rid of these properties. It was crazy. It was a great time, but that happens when you focus on the right deals. I remember his name was Brent, my dispo guy at that time. And we were in North Dallas around Custer. And we're at this property and we had investor after investor after investor. And then right after we sold that, it took us like 20 days to sell that property. Right after we sold that, we had, I think it was 10 of them were in South Dallas around I-35. He's like, man, I thought we worked with like $200,000 properties all the time. And now we're dealing with like $30,000, $40,000 properties. And he's basically in that lower end neighborhood. And we end up turning a bunch of those. It was a fun time. It was a super fun time. If he's watching this, man, we were hanging out a lot. We were driving, going out to eat, and we were really busy. But the reason why we got that way is because I stopped focusing on stuff that didn't matter. I stopped focusing on the website. I stopped focusing on admin work. I focused on revenue generating activity, because if you don't, guys, you will get sucked in and it will put you out of business. The last mistake I made, guys, is I listened to too many people's advice. Okay. Like too many people were giving me advice. I was getting advice from this wholesaler and this guy and this guy and this guy. And I was trying to take all the advice, and everything that they said made sense. right? I'm listening like, man, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, when you're getting started, what I've found and in my experience is that I had to choose a strategy, I had to choose a model, and I had to choose a marketing channel. And a lot of them were right. Okay. Like a lot of the directions were right. Like there's lots of ways to make money. Lots of people make money in lots of different ways, guys. And what I found, I was listening to way too many people and I was taking all this advice and I wasn't finding my strategy. And so when I finally filtered out what people were saying and I said, you know what, I'm doing this model. I'm going to find people in this way. And I chose direct mail back then. And I started direct mailing. I was dropping things off at the post office. Literally every Friday, I would drop off a huge bin of green postcards to the mail. I'd walk in there, they'd scan them, I'd put them on the waste thing, and then I would take phone calls the following week. When I got clear on my model and my strategy, things started to take off and I had opportunities. I had more deals to look at. But one of the biggest mistakes you can do is as you're trying to learn, you hear a whole bunch of different models and you get paralyzed with what to do. It's like you walk into the grocery store. I don't know if you guys are like this. My wife sends me to the grocery store. It's like, get some bread. I walk to the bread aisle and there's like 70 different kinds. And then it's like, well, get organic. And you go there and there's like 10 different types of organic, right? Like I don't do good with options. And that's the same thing that happens when you take too much advice. You get paralyzed because you don't know what to do. The truth is, no matter what direction you go, there's lots of good ways to win. You need to pick a model. You need to follow that model and you need to get results in that model and just have blinders on. Just do that model and you'll win. If you're like me and you want to learn and you have this huge thing of knowledge, just like all these books, you can kind of get confused and you're not sure exactly what to do. I'd rather you pick one thing and stick to it and go and really take action on that one thing. You guys will get results. So those are a lot of the mistakes I made. Now I want to flip this around. I want to give you guys some tips on things that you should do as a result. All right. So we'll blow this. So number one, keep your expenses down and talk to sellers as much as possible. Talk to people who will bring you deals as much as possible. If you talk to people who will bring you deals, finding deals is the number one way. So number one, keep your expenses down and put money in the bank. Number two, don't hire people too soon, okay? This is kind of similar to number one, but number two is literally reward yourself for your success. Take 75% of all the profit you make up front and put it in the bank or give it to yourself. Reward yourself, and that's going to want you to do more of the business. If you just put it away and you take a small amount, you're going to de-incentivize yourself to build the business. You want as much incentive as possible, and initially, those big checks, man, they give you tons of incentive. You make $10,000, seven grand is yours. That's a huge incentive to keep doing this and doing it over and over again. Put money in the bank, take a big portion of it, and invest only a small portion back into the business and spend it and grow that small portion and keep the rest. It'll give you massive, massive amounts of motivation. Number three, as I'm looking here at my notes, don't tell too many people. You hear advice all the time out there. Tell everybody that you're a real estate investor, which is great. But don't tell too many people. And the reason why is you don't want too many people dissuading you initially, convincing you not to do it, getting out. You kind of want to just shut out the world, put earmuffs on, put earplugs in, and be blind and do your work. And focus. Don't tell too many people. Now, my next tip, number 4, is going to seem contrary to my last one I just said, is tell all the right people. And what I mean by this is you don't want to tell all the people who are going to convince you not to do it, but you do want to tell all the people who are going to bring you leads and bring you deals, because real estate's about finding good deals. So tell all the people what you're looking for. This is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. This is where I'm going after. Don't tell people, this is what I'm thinking about. This is where I'm going. Everyone's going to have advice. Instead, tell people what you want, and people will bring you what you want. And then lastly, this kind of goes into my mistakes, is focus on finding deals. Focus on finding deals, not looking good. Be vulnerable. Tell people where you're at. Show people you're hungry, and be authentic. Because authentic people who are hungry, who add value, that's who we want to be around in life. So, guys, I hope that you have learned from some of the mistakes I've made. I'd love to hear what mistakes you made. If you found this valuable and you found it helpful, hit the like button below, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and share it with some other people. If you found this value, share it with some other people out there so that that way they can avoid those same mistakes too. So until next time, guys, bye-bye.